an honor to be here. Why don't you guys introduce yourself real briefly, just so everybody knows what you do and who you are?
Sure. Hi, I'm Richard Alfonsi. I'm Vice President of Global Online Sales for Twitter. So look out for a pretty large swath of our advertising business, from the smallest small business, some of our biggest clients.
So you're the promoted tweets that we all see.
That's true. My team does look out for clients using those promoted tweets, and we'll talk a lot about that.
Yeah.
And I'm John Lord from EA, and I'm focused on mobile user acquisition.
Yay.
Yeah.
So a growth hacker or something.
Yeah, definitely. If you all want to take out your phones and download a few of our apps, we have one for each of you. We'd really appreciate it.
So this afternoon I'm speaking to the 500 startups, and big companies and small have user acquisition problems, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
If you don't get users, you don't survive in this business.
Definitely, yeah. It's about, we want to find the best people to bring into our games.
So, there's a few big social networks, Facebook, Twitter, and Google+, LinkedIn, right? LinkedIn was just here on the stage. How do you figure out where to get users? And how do you approach that at EA?
It really comes down to rigorous testing. So we go out and we get in touch with all these great partners. We learn about their technology. We've had our eyes on Twitter for a really long time. They have a huge user base. They have fantastic targeting. And then it really comes down to that the tech that we can actually put our ads into and communicate with the users. And it's a lot of testing. We test with everybody big and small to find the partners that have the right traffic sources for users that are interested in our games.
Yeah, it's a lot harder to get users on mobile, is my theory, because it's harder to show them something on a small little screen. Is that true?
Absolutely, especially a lot of mobile web is really small banners, stuff like that, which is why we love these big full screen interstitials or the native ads that are in feeds, stuff like that.
Yeah. And what kind of results are you seeing from your various social media campaigns?
Yeah, social seems to be great, and I think it's because of all the really deep targeting options that we have. We have a racing game called Real Racing 3, and we can go out, we can target people following Ford with Ford images and Chevy with Chevy images. We can even go and if Fast and the Furious is on TV, we can target people on Twitter that are using #NOS. And we can give them a really cool ad. And we don't need to say, hey, you like this, you should play this game. Because they like this, they'll be interested in that game. So we can just show them a really good piece of content instead of trying to make it obviously targeted at them.
Yeah. And how does it work when you buy promoted tweets? Tell me what that process is like, and what happens when you do buy it.
Yeah, so you can either do it directly through the Twitter interface, or you can use a third-party API tool. Right now, we're going directly in the back of the engine and doing it. So you just set up a campaign. You decide what countries you want to target, which devices you want to target, and you can do interest in followers, or you can do conversation targeting, or TV or keyword targeting. You can build some really robust targeting sets, and then you upload your images. So Twitter has some beautiful units now that they've built that we get, pretty much a full screen image, and we can talk about our game and insert that 140 characters of text. It's a really easy experience, and you can build very deep campaigns and global campaigns. One thing that we found is that some countries like Japan are really hard to target, and Twitter has great traffic there. Yeah.
What's happening from inside the Twitter viewpoint? What are you seeing happen with promoted tweets? How well is the monetization on Twitter, and who's doing it well?
Yeah, well, look, I think that John had a lot of the highlights as far as how we think about promoted tweets. Promoted tweets are really an organic native ad unit. Sorry, my mic's messing up here. A native ad unit that's really woven into the conversation of Twitter. And thinking about how that really does create a canvas for an advertiser to connect with the right user at the right time. So this offering we just launched, globally launched it last week for the mobile app promotion suite, we're really excited about. And John and the EA team have been an early adopter of that in our beta period. So across the board, though, across all verticals, we're seeing great results from retail, consumer packaged goods, travel, entertainment, now mobile apps. We're seeing a lot of great traction, really up and down the funnel, both brand-oriented goals at the upper part of the funnel, increasingly more direct response, performance-oriented goals, as I'd characterize the mobile app install goal that a lot of user acquisition-focused app developers have right now. So we're pretty pleased with what we're seeing. I think that it's early days overall, certainly early days for this mobile app promotion suite, but the results we've seen from EA and from some other beta testers have been very positive. So we're excited to launch it.
I went to Coachella this year, and they had the first beacons. And beacons are little radios that spit 3 numbers in the air. and my phone can tell how close it is to that beacon. Are you guys thinking at all about using promoted tweets at a location or something like that? So if somebody walks into the Coachella, all of a sudden they're getting hey, there's a cool game that might go along with your music, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we do have a lot of great contextually relevant signals. We have the interests that John was talking about. We have, kind of the connection between Twitter and TV. Location is certainly powerful. 80% of our usage is on a mobile device. Yeah. So we have, that 80%. Important. Yeah. So it's Twitter's been kind of mobile-centric from the very beginning. In fact, the reason a tweet's 140 characters is we work on the SMS system back in 2006. That was the constraint that the system had. So overall, using all those signals and thinking about that hyper-local signal you're talking about, we think is pretty powerful. Nothing announced here. We don't have anything kind of really locked and loaded, but it is something that we think is important.
Yeah, give us a mic.
Yeah, this is my mic is not working out so well. Thank you.
Just in case. When maybe either of you, what are some tips for people who are going to try getting users through Twitter?
I think it comes down to testing. If you think 5 images is enough, probably try 25 images. Try different text with the images. You really have to test to find what's going to work. And also within that targeting, you might want to go broad at first or really narrow at first, but you don't worry about overlap. Just test, and you will find results. I always like to start from the inside out. So whoever you believe is most relevant to you, go there and then maybe add on users based on some of the different targeting options.
I'm sure you guys are using Google and Facebook and other things to try to acquire. How is Twitter different, and how should you approach thinking about Twitter for getting users?
Yeah, the thing that we were most nervous about is that on Twitter, people can interact with these ads. So they can reply, they can retweet, it could have been a lot of negative sentiment. Instead, we had tremendous positive sentiment. I never expected people to CC their friend on one of our ads and say, hey, you have to check this game out. Or for The Sims, they were saying, hey, remember our sim that we used to share? Really compelling stuff and stuff that you don't see anywhere else. That's what we were really surprised about. I know our community teams got really excited when they saw that.
Do you have a team at EA that stays up all night during the World Cup and thinks about ways to use promoted tweets during a live event, the way Oreos did during the Super Bowl, that kind of thing?
Yeah, FIFA is one of our major games, so the World Cup has been a great event for us. We released a version of FIFA that was just for the World Cup. It's always on in the office, and we've wanted to integrate our game and our brand with the World Cup as much as possible, and I know Twitter has done a tremendous job of that, so the two in combination have been really strong. If you follow any of the FIFA handles, you've seen what we've done in terms of every goal scored, basically. We're showing that player, but not just their real image, the FIFA version of that player, and it's really cool stuff.
We like the idea of having sort of always-on campaigns that are running using some of the targeting techniques John mentioned, whether it's keyword targeting based on what people are tweeting about, interests based on who they follow or what other handles that they're interested in, the TV conversations. You always kind of pick up that, but then thinking about building these event-based strategies on top of that, whether it's the World Cup, whether it's movie premiere, a big gaming launch, et cetera. We think that's a pretty powerful combination to make sure you're kind of capturing all the demand with the targeting the platform lets you have, but then really capture these major events that do unfold on Twitter, like the World Cup is happening right now in a way we're pretty excited about.
Yeah, Twitter is really good for news and events and talking about TV and talking about things in your life, right? It's not really where you put your baby photos, although people do that, but that's sort of more.
Yeah, I think the way we describe Twitter as a consumer platform, there are a few words we use. It's live, it's public, and it's conversational. I mean, the live aspect is a little what you alluded to. Yeah. It's real time. It's what's happening right now. So people go to Twitter to think about, hey, what's new, what's hot, what's trending. And I think that is an excellent mindset for app discovery. Right? You're going to be engaged with users who want to find something new, and you get a chance to kind of get in front of them with the right context. But the whole public and conversational pieces are also quite distinctive. Other networks are closed by their nature. I mean, they're opening up, but Twitter's default setting is public. Everyone can see what everyone else is tweeting unless you take real strong steps to not let that happen. And that creates these moments of serendipity, especially conversational moments where you might have celebrities or world leaders interacting with just normal folks, or you might have a business having an interaction with the user in a way that wouldn't be possible before. So that mindset about kind of what's happening right now and that public and conversational aspect, things like John mentioned, where people can, and they do, they retweet ads. that is unheard of. You think about the idea of like taking a screenshot of a display ad and kind of forwarding it to your friends. That never happened. But now you've got a situation where it is a common use case that people are retweeting and basically forwarding these ads because they are so relevant. They're part of that public conversation.
I'm sure since you're a vice president at Twitter, you get to deal with all the big accounts that have millions of dollars of ad spend capability. What about for somebody, a startup that maybe has a $1,000 ad budget this month?
Totally. I look out for those guys too. So the small business channel is very much part of my world, and everyone in between.
And how would you approach a small business that has maybe $1,000 to spend on ads versus an EA that probably has $100,000?
I think the approach is not dissimilar to what John mentioned. I mean, I'm a big fan of kind of test and iterate. Basically get some campaigns going. Think about the combination of targeting, creative, and measurement. The optimization, and then optimize. Turn that crank and continue to see what works. Measure the performance. So whether you're spending $1,000 or $100,000 or 10 million, think about what goals do you have in mind and how are we actually capturing those goals. And we've got teams that help with that, help advertisers of all sizes. For the smallest small businesses, we do have a self-serve interface. In fact, it's the same interface that John and his team are using, but we give them a little extra help. We have account teams that can make recommendations for the larger guys. Yeah. But the small guys do quite well as well.
Yeah. How is mobile changing the world of advertising, and where do you think it's going? Because now we have a computer in our hand that we get to go to Coachella with, or go to a restaurant with, or walk down the street with. That's quite different than the world Bill Gates invented, right?
Yeah, no, I think it is a big difference. I think Jason Spiro earlier, a colleague of mine from Google, he described a lot of those changes, and I think that's very true. But I do think it's a much more intimate experience. You have this phone with you all the time. There's a stat that we uncovered that you actually unlock your phone on average 110 times a day, which at first to me was mind-blowing. Then I realized, hey, if you sleep like 8 hours, that's like less than 7 times an hour. Yep. So I easily do that, probably more.
Yep.
So this thing is always with you, and it has such kind of intimate information about where you are, what you're interested in, what you're doing. It provides a lot of great context that you can harness as a marketer. So, a couple things we're interested in. One is, harnessing that for Twitter, because Twitter has a lot of those contexts. But second, we're very interested in the overall mobile app ecosystem. So some of the kind of recent moves we've made, we bought a company called MoPub, Mobile Ad Exchange, about 9 months ago, really to think about how we can, get access to a broader set of inventory where people spend time across, the broader tens of thousands of apps in the ecosystem. And advertisers are increasingly thinking about accessing that programmatically, using real-time bidding and those kind of techniques. More recently, just in fact last week, we announced the acquisition of a company called Tap Commerce, which gets into also in that world outside of Twitter, but thinking about app re-engagement. So if the large, part of the goals we've talked about today so far are getting app installs, this is about getting people to re-engage with apps that are already downloaded onto their device. Yeah. But again, access to the broader app ecosystem. So we think that's really going in a good direction that we can help.
I noticed on Twitter, there's a lot of people like me who give it a lot of signal. I've tweeted 60,000 times, something like that in the last 8 years. But most people don't tweet at all, right? They're just there as a lurker. Does the ad work differently based on who you're aiming at? Somebody who's a heavy user who's given Twitter a lot of signal, and somebody who's a light user and hasn't given them any
use the signals we have available. And even if you are, a lurker, like you say, it's a consumption-only model that we think is great, because that is an important and powerful use case. I think that the fact that you've curated a timeline and you're picking who you want to follow, that's an important signal, right? And sometimes if you unfollow someone, that's a really important signal too. It shows you're no longer interested in that person. Being able to do kind of modeling around users like or accounts like those you're following is important. What tweets you engage with, what you interact with, is also a really important signal. We have a lot of info around what that consumption experience looks like. It's not just around what you're tweeting.
Do different companies approach that context differently? Some might want to just do a campaign to everybody. Some might really want to look for those signals and take advantage of it.
I think it really depends on your goal as an advertiser. And I think there are a dozen ways or more you can target on the platform, and John ran through a lot of them. But the interests, keywords people are either tweeting or engaging with. TV conversation, because you have this second screen phenomenon where people are watching TV and they're kind of on their Twitter timeline. Tailored audiences where you can actually upload your own data, whether it's kind of cookie-based info or whether it's mobile ID information, and overlay all that stuff with respect to geo-targeting or device types, et cetera. So you can get as granular as you possibly want to get, but it really depends on your goal. I mean, if you want to think about going broad and global, you might want to kind of open up the gates a bit. If you really want to get targeted specifically, hey, if you're Lyft, you might want to get people in San Francisco tweeting about the fact, hey, I don't want to drive home tonight. Right? That might be a really important way to think about it.
Yeah, or get it earlier and say we're going drinking tonight, right? Because those are people probably who shouldn't be driving home tonight. Tell me about some mistakes that maybe you made or you saw others make while trying to get new users. What do you see people doing wrong on this new platform?
Yeah, I think we have some games that are very casual and some games that are very core. And any app that is smaller or more niche can be really hard to target. And you could go out there and you could be searching for users really aggressively and potentially come away without very much. So that's really about finding that audience, being conservative at first and really figuring out who that audience is, what type of messaging is going to work for them, and then investing in them. If you go out the gate and hit everybody with something that's more of a niche product, you might end up poorly investing your resources.
Yeah. Anything you've seen that companies have done wrong when coming in this new world?
Yes, one thing I'd say is you shouldn't be bashful as a business to engage with your client base. Sometimes people are nervous, like John said, they're worried, gosh, people can engage with these tweets, what will happen? Yeah. And generally speaking, good things happen. Even if there's a negative sentiment, there are some great examples of clients who have taken that head on and turned it around 180 degrees. So sometimes your client may sit back, something negative might unfold on the platform, and there's, what do I do, kind of deer in the headlights. That's not what to do, right? Being able to be active and get out ahead of the situation and be able to turn that around is pretty potent.
Final question, what's the hottest game on Twitter right now?
The hottest game on Twitter is probably The Sims Free Play. It's a great game by Electronic Arts. I recommend you guys all check it out.
Very cool. Thank you so much for joining me for this panel.